If you scan the history of the railways in this country, you will see that it was the presidency towns Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta that determined the pattern of our railways as well as of our industrial and economic growth. The British, when they landed in this country, established trading centers called forts. In Madras, it was Fort St. George. In Calcutta, it was Fort St. Williams, and in Bombay, it was merely a fort, and there was one in Surat also. It is these trading establishments which determined the pattern of government, the pattern of administration, and every other pattern under the British regime. They constructed the railways, they established the industries, they located their armies with reference to these three presidency towns. This idea of presidency towns determining the pattern of our social structure, industrial advancement, and the system of our railways still persists. That is the mental lag that is hampering the vision of the Planning Commission, the Railway Board, and the Railway Ministry. Sir, once I happened to travel from London to Rome by train. Another time I had to travel from Moscow to Leningrad by train. Now, nowhere did I find on the continent of Europe lines of varying breadth. It is all a uniform gauge. So is it in Russia, it may be 6 feet there. In America, in every industrial advanced country, you find that the gauge is uniform. This very country which ruled us, namely the United Kingdom, had inside its border a uniform gauge, but they inflicted three systems of gauge in India. They thought that would perpetuate what is called their domination, or in the negative sense that it would impede the industrial and economic growth of India. Secondly, it would make India always the customer and purchaser of lines and locomotives and rolling stock from the United Kingdom. In the old days, I am told it is the government which built the broad gauge line, and it is the private companies that took to this meter gauge and the narrow gauge. Though they may not have had the distinction of private and public sector in view then, it now appears that what the so-called public sector then did has been good, or what the private sector then did has been to our disadvantage. I would appeal to these agencies to introduce a uniform gauge throughout India. In this connection, it will be interesting to note that the talk of the Honorable Railway Minister about the schools, primary schools, higher secondary schools, and high schools for the Indian Railways. If you examine the previous speech of the Railway Minister and also the working report of the Railway Board, you will find that the same figure is repeated every year. I have examined the figures and I find this year only 16 schools have been added, out of which 13 are primary schools, 1 is a higher secondary school, and 2 are middle or high schools. Instead of saying that they have been able only to provide 13 primary schools or 1 or 2 more high schools or higher secondary schools, the same figures are repeated in the speech. Although the Railway Board has all along been saying that education is the responsibility of the state, and therefore the Railway Board does not own this responsibility. I would like to remind the Railway Minister about the agreement reached between the National Federation of Railwaymen and the Railway Board in the year 1955, according to which the Railway Board undertook to provide primary schools for the education of the children of railway employees. Sir, as I told you earlier, I had to say many things on the floor of this house, but I will conclude with only 1 or 2 more observations. I will first deal with the labor relations on the Indian Railways. I slightly differ from my honorable friend when he quoted me as saying that the permanent negotiating machinery has completely failed. It is a fact that this machinery is not functioning satisfactorily. At certain places, it has failed. There is no doubt about it, but I would say in this house more frankly that at the board's level this machinery has been working successfully. But this is not the position so far as the zonal railways are concerned. I do not say that in all the zonal railways it is so, but in certain zonal railways and in most of the divisions of these railways it has failed. I was expecting that the railway minister would examine the working of this machinery in all the railways. What is the greatest defect in this machinery? This machinery suffers to the extent that at the board level, if there is difference of opinion between the railway board and the railway labor, no arbitration machinery is provided to settle the disputes. The provision in this machinery is that as and when an occasion arises, an ad hoc tribunal would be set up by government. May I, Madam, draw the attention of the Honorable Minister to an important committee set up by the Government of India in 1958 under the chairmanship of Mr. Neogi, who was asked to inquire into the various problems of railway road coordination. Their preliminary report appeared some time ago, and it was even circulated to all the state governments for their opinion. But to my regret, I have to say that the work of this committee has been very much hindered as a result of the indifference and, may I say, callous negligence on the part of the state governments as well as on the part of the ministry concerned in taking up this question and in pursuing it so that we may be able to have a clear and comprehensive picture of the transport situation in the country. Now, railway transport, like any other mode of transport, is suffering under a major handicap. The handicap being that we do not know, nor does the railway ministry know, what the exact quantum of transport requirement in the country is and what the rising demand is, which the railways are expected to cater to in future. Certain targets which have been worked out in the third plan have been given to us. In the second plan, we were given certain targets. But unfortunately, Madam, may I point out that all those targets were either gross underestimates or exaggerations. Throughout, we have seen that we have not been able to have a well coordinated and progressive development of the transport system, and in particular the railway system in the country. So anything we suggest today will have that kind of air of unreality. Without knowing fully or adequately what exactly the transport needs in the country are, we are not in a position to discuss or dilate upon the problems of the railways or the transport itself. Madam, last year when I was speaking on the budget, I pointed out that there had been planning of some sort, but within this planning there had not been sufficient planning in the functioning of the administration. There has not been planning in carrying out the various phases of the program enunciated in the plan or in the budget. Frequently, we came across the statement by the Honorable Minister that the railways have not been able to fulfill certain things. I went through the pages of the budget papers and also the speech of the minister. I came across this significant expression. Whatever there are failures or shortfalls in performance, we are told that these are mainly due to unpredictable factors or factors beyond control. I do not think that some of the factors which my honorable friend would like to us to believe that they are unpredictable or uncontrollable cannot be anticipated. For instance, I may draw the attention of the Honorable Minister to one important fact, that is, we have been supplying since some time past empty haulage for a long distance of collieries to steel factories and so on. We are told that this empty haulage is unavoidable, that we have to find empty wagons to steel factories and collieries to carry raw material or perhaps coal and the like. So for a long distance we find wagons going empty, but if there had been a research cell, an organization in the ministry to find out ways and means of utilizing these wagons fruitfully by avoiding bottlenecks in between, we could have solved the transport difficulty to a certain extent. I do not want to be told by the minister that this is a physical impossibility. Even in the advanced countries of the world, every movement of wagon, coach and engine is planned before it is put into operation. It is unfortunate and tragic that in this country, after a decade of planning, we have not been able to think in terms of planning while executing the works. Now, in regard to some of the general problems of the railways, I would say first of all that the rise in demand is so great that we have to be prepared to provide not only adequate but also effective transport facilities to our people. I need not tell The house that the railway transport system in general is greatly interdependent on the general economy of the country. But during the last 1 decade, there has been one significant factor that has to be appreciated.